Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was grilled in the Senate today. We'll bring you some sizzling details about that. And Washington State, casting your vote on a napkin seems to be a great way to vote. In a few minutes, I'll talk with attorney Victory News contributor John Graves about next year's elections. But first, let's go to Mike Garofalo. He has tonight's top stories. Mike?
Greg, in closing arguments, Kyle Rittenhouse's attorney told jurors to take politics out of it when considering whether his client acted in self-defense when he fatally shot 2 people and injured another. Rittenhouse's attorney, Mark Richards, said the district attorney brought the case forward because they need someone to be responsible.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a political case. We can take politics out of it as in Democrat and Republican, but the district attorney's office is marching forward with this case because they need somebody to be responsible. They need somebody to put and say, we did it. He's the person who brought terror to Kenosha. Kyle Rittenhouse is not that individual. The rioters, the demonstrators who turned into rioters, those are the individuals who bring us forth.
Kyle Rittenhouse pulled 6 random jurors, lottery style, to be made standbys as the remaining 12 would make the final verdict. As the jury moved to deliberations, protesters gathered to make their thoughts known in advance, and tempers flared with protesters outside the courthouse. This afternoon, the jury did reach out to the judge requesting 11 more copies of pages 7 through 36 of the jury instructions after requesting pages 1 through 6 this morning. This gives each of them complete copies of the jury instructions. We will continue to monitor the Rittenhouse trial story and bring you any updates when they happen. And Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee today. It was an oversight hearing for DHS, and let's just say the secretary was kept on his toes. You might even say grilled. Here's part of what Texas Senator Ted Cruz had to say to Mayorkas, and this was the Republican being nice.
True or false, Secretary Mayorkas, this year under Joe Biden, we've seen the highest rate of illegal immigration in 61 years.
Again, I don't know the number of years, but it's certainly a historic high, Senator.
So you're right, it's broken, but you broke it. Let me ask you, in the calendar year 2021, how many illegal immigrants do you expect to have crossed illegally into the United States?
I believe the total number of encounters, as has been referenced in this hearing earlier, is approximately just under 1.7 million.
But there's 2 months remaining. Is it correct that you project over 2 million illegal immigrants in 2021, calendar year 2021?
I believe that is correct, Senator. And over the last 3 months, we've seen a drop in the numbers by reason.
And how many children do you project in 2021?
I'm sorry?
How many children will have crossed illegally in 2021?
I believe that thus far, through October 31st, Senator, approximately 125,000 unaccompanied children have been transferred to the shelter and care of Health and Human Services.
So just under 20% of 56,000 unaccompanied minors. That means the Biden administration has lost track of more than 11,000 children who entered this country illegally. Greg, back to you.
All right, last week we began our year-long countdown to the midterm elections in 2022. As promised, we're continuing to keep an eye on where America stands as we approach that day next November.
According to the Post-Millennial, during a King County Review Board discussing elections, officials in Seattle, Washington, actually acknowledged that if someone wrote a candidate's name on a napkin and the title of the position they were running for, that vote will be counted. Another example is where someone sent a newspaper clipping of a candidate but failed to circle that candidate's name. As a result, officials said that vote would not count. No surprise, Washington state seems to have the most lax voting laws in the nation.
She is a former lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, hopes to win the state's top job in 2022. But first, Rebecca Kleefisch filed a lawsuit with the state Supreme Court for numerous alleged violations in the election law of 2020. The Republican recently told the Federalist, quote, "We need to make sure that the law breaking we saw happening in 2020 never happens again in Wisconsin." This is about forcing the Wisconsin Election Commission Commission to clean up their act and provide clear, law-abiding plans on how to implement the 2022 elections. According to the report, the state's Legislative Audit Bureau found the Elections Commission violated state law by allowing some drop boxes to be unattended, closing some polling locations, and banning special voting deputies from nursing homes. I want to bring in attorney, Victory News contributor John Graves. Wisconsin's lieutenant governor files a lawsuit. We watched. Wisconsin was one of those that had, it looked interesting during the middle of the night. She's asked to clean up the election laws before she runs for governor. Is there a conflict asking them this to happen before she runs for higher office?
It's not a conflict. It's wise and very strategic. She's making very clear something that two-thirds of the GOP believe. This is last election. There was a lot of unconstitutional irregularities and fraud, all of the above. And so she's right to point this out. There was the Wisconsin 5. There's the Racine County. They just saw the nursing home thing. There's an audit now underway. It's not as intense and public and even really known as Arizona's, but watch for Wisconsin. Rebecca is one of the ladies on the GOP side that I think has a great chance to do something. I met with her in person. She's very sharp. She knows what she's doing, and she's right to be aggressive on this issue instead of try to hide it. Because people are mad about it.
Yes, they are. And voting on napkins and circling somebody's picture in the newspaper. I'm thinking I can write your name on a napkin and we can get you elected. What in the world is going on in Seattle, Washington?
Is there any questions? Now, another lady who's conservative, Tiffany Smiley out there, I think she's a sleeper, but she's in the Senate, not the governor like Rebecca. Look for her. But in Washington, it's nuts. If you can vote on a napkin, how can anyone say it's a secure election? What if you just, millions of illegal, undocumented people start voting on napkins, or one person sends millions of napkins? I mean, if they're going to count a napkin, they'll count anything. And so that is not a safe election. It's not a secure election. It's not a fair election. It's not an auditable election. It's not a traceable election. It's not a constitutional election. That's what we need to fight for.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the Rittenhouse trial. You're an attorney, and I want to get your perspective on the trial and what the jury may be brought back, because I see this as the right to defend yourself actually being on trial more than anything else. John?
It really is. With the political overtones, everybody's afraid, or most people are afraid to talk about because of the cancel culture and all that nonsense. Here is the insanity. There's a legal issue and then there's a political, spiritual issue. The legal issue is it's really malpractice. As an attorney, former assistant district attorney on criminal matters, it is really embarrassing what they've done. The prosecutor stood up and tried to basically build a whole case out of the opposite of what the evidence showed. He defended himself. He was attacked. He was hit over the head with a skateboard. These people were, a whole mob was coming after him. And think about this. This is the insanity on the spiritual political side. It is a white person defending himself from two aggressive white people who were trying to, also saying they were going to kill other people, and everyone's calling it racist. They're calling him a white supremacist. And so it is just nuts how the narratives get taken off and confused by people, and it's always the language that the enemy tries to deceive.
Sure. Real quick on this one. I saw something this morning that I've never seen before in a trial. Kyle Rittenhouse, they had 18 jurors. He picks out 6 for lottery that moves them to the backup position. I've never seen that before. What's that about?
It happens sometimes where, to be safe, so you don't have to start a whole trial if somebody gets recused or there's jury tampering, that they'll put up some backup alternates and then the judge can do it. That's a procedure I've seen and been a part of in other cases. So that's not too unusual. They're all there. They've heard all the evidence, but a few are now going to be alternates in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. He's a minor. We've got to remember that he's 17 years old, and now Mayorkas has lost around 11,000 minors that have come into this country. John, we'll be back to you in just a moment. Mike, back to you.
Greg, former Obama administration Secretary of Education Arne Duncan took time on Monday to retweet and praise a report on Austria's drastic decision to lock down unvaccinated citizens. The measure applies to adults and children over the age of 11 due to an uptick in COVID-19 cases. Here is what Duncan's portion of the tweet said. If you're a danger to yourself and others, you must remain at home. If you aren't, you are free to roam around the country. Austria is on to something. It does make one wonder whether a similar policy could be embraced by other countries. A city council in Northern California town has voted to declare itself a constitutional republic city. The Oroville City Council voted 6-1 to approve the measure and say it's no different than other sanctuary city declarations. Only this one is to protect its residents from burdensome federal and state mandates. Vice Mayor Scott Thompson says these range from masks to vaccines and business and school closures during the pandemic.
We're not talking about one mandate that's been pushed on us recently. It's a barrage of mandates.
UC Davis law professor Lisa Pruitt says she believes ultimately the move will not be legal and is only a political gesture.
Ultimately, this would be determined by a court. The strong presumption would be that the city of Oroville does not have the power to do this.
Thompson says the council takes the virus seriously, but also takes the constitutional rights of its citizens seriously as well. The Loudoun County, Virginia School Board has agreed not to retaliate against an elementary school gym teacher for expressing his beliefs over its transgender policy.
I'm a teacher, but I serve God first, and I will not affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa because it's against my religion.
Tanner Cross made the comments at his school board meeting where he opposed a resolution that would require teachers to address students by their gender identity rather than their biological sex. Cross was suspended from teaching for his comments. After suing the school system, a judge ordered the district to reinstate him for violating his First Amendment rights. The district has now reached a settlement with Tanner Cross not to retaliate further and strike the suspension from his record. 2 other teachers have joined Cross in a larger case still pending, challenging the overall constitutionality of the district's transgender policy, which passed this summer.
Last night at the Keller, Texas school board meeting, parents were out in force to challenge pornographic material in the school's libraries. And plenty of dads showed up this time.
And please stop the sexual grooming of our children by these types of books and illustrations.
It is my job to teach my kids about sex. It's y'all's job to help teach about reading, writing, and arithmetic.
One father summed up the purpose of education and the role of teachers very well.
Math is not political. Reading is not political. Objective science and objective history are not political. And I never gave any of you permission to teach my children topics including race, gender, LGBT, sex, politics, or any other similar topics.
The father issued a warning to the district leadership if things fail to improve. Quote, prepare yourselves for a mass exodus of students, he said. Furthermore, I encourage all the parents in here to seriously consider whether or not to keep your students in the district if things continue down this path. Let's bring in Victory News contributor John Graves. Can every teacher and school board member on that board, can they be on board with graphic material and CRT theory? Are all those folks on board with that?
You know, it's ridiculous. It's over, here's the thing, is it's come all over the country. We're talking about it in Virginia, we talked about it in California, we talked about it in other places. It's in your own backyard, whether you're a homeschooler, a Christian school, private school, or public school. You need to get involved because it's the next generation your kids are going to be working with and doing business with, and it's out of control. There's over 90 books that are pornographic. They've shown them. They keep taking them off, and they're now awake, and that's what parents need to do. I think you're going to see an uprising, and hopefully they continue. There's 3 elections happening next May, and people are upset, and I don't think that's going away.
Where do you fall in this discussion in terms of what that father said at the end there about a mass exodus from the school district?
Yeah, my wife and I have done homeschool, Christian school, co-op, college, model school, and public. We've done them all, and they all have pros and cons. I think parents should make up their own mind, but whether you take your kids out of school, you need to be involved as a voter who lives in that district. You pay taxes, so you need to have a say in the votes, and you need to get educated about who these people are because they pretend to be one way on the surface, and then this kind of stuff is going on behind the scenes, and so it's going to be a hot topic, and it's not going away. Yeah, and it's all over the country.
It is all over the country. All right, former Obama Secretary of Education Arne Duncan says we need to lock down unvaxxed people like Austria is doing. Normally, I would ignore this as crazy talk, but nowadays you can't. How do we combat that?
You got to push against it. You really do, because, you know, the language and the deception is in the language. The CDC just redefined a vaccine to say it's no longer immunity. What? That's what our whole life is. And you know the other second thing they're ignoring is natural immunity. They're saying lockdown if you haven't had the vaccine, as if it gives you immunity or keeps you from spreading it. It doesn't do either one or keep you from dying. It doesn't provide immunity. And yet natural immunity does, more so than the vaccine, and no one's talking about it.
Yeah.
Plus religious freedom. People need to make an issue out of this.
Right. God made an immune system for all of us, and if you listen to it, it will protect you. Oroville, California declares themselves a sanctuary city against Biden and Newsom mandates. I don't know if that'll hold up in court. Your thoughts?
You know, they've been having sanctuary cities all over the country for illegal people who violate the law and come across the border, which now there's 2 million more in the first year of Biden's term, or that's what they're on track to surpass. I think it does. I think what you need to see is people on the other side of the equation having a constitutional sanctuary state for First Amendment, for Second Amendment, for freedom of religion, for all of the other things that are stopping the insanity, including government-mandated vaccines that are stuffing it down people and costing them their jobs. So basic services.
Your city could be a vaccine sanctuary city. And never mind. I was trying to go somewhere with that, John. John, we'll come back.
Cities need to stand up. People need to stand up. School boards need to stand up. The church needs to stand up, speak up, and be the influence for the culture.
There it is, right there. Thank you, John Graves. We'll be back to you in just a moment. Mike, over to you.
Craig, President Joe Biden opened his virtual meeting with China's Xi Jinping on Monday by saying their goal is to ensure competition does not veer into conflict.
I'm happy we had found time to meet. And I look forward to a candid and forthright discussions like all the discussions we've had thus far. As I've said before, it seems to me our responsibility as leaders of China and the United States is to ensure that the competition between our countries does not veer into conflict, whether intended or unintended. Just simple, straightforward competition.
The two leaders met by video amid mounting tensions in the U.S.-China relationship. Biden has criticized Beijing over human rights abuses against Uyghurs in northwest China, squelching democratic protests in Hong Kong and military aggression against the self-ruled island of Hong Kong, that is, in addition to patent stealing and massive trade imbalance. According to Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby, who shared this news on Monday, an Iranian Navy helicopter flew within 25 yards of the USS Essex. And it just wasn't a one-off. Kirby said the helicopter circled the Essex 3 times, and at one point the helicopter was just 10 feet off the ocean. That was the Gulf of Oman. Incredibly, the crew of the Essex did not aggressively or defensively respond to the clearly unsafe and unprofessional conduct of the Iranian pilot. Greg, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I want to bring John Graves back in here. John Graves, while we're talking about mandates and trials and all the other stuff, there's serious things going on in the world with China, and that is very serious. A helicopter buzzing an aircraft carrier of the United States. Your thought?
It was a little embarrassing to see the President of the United States reading a script about, hey, we just need to compete. Let's not do anything dangerous, which is not a position of strength. That's the opposite of President Trump, President Reagan, peace through strength. And so it's a little embarrassing to see the leader of the free world, the leader of our military, basically trying to appease like Chamberlain did Hitler before World War II.
What we did,
China could get aggressive, and we better respond.
What we didn't show in that clip, for sake of time, at the very beginning, Xi says to him, "My old friend, Joe Biden." John, before we go today, would you lead us in prayer? We've got about 45 seconds here.
Yes, God, I just thank you for all of these different issues. They come to us at the school board level, at the national level, military level. Everything that is out there is a biblical worldview issue. I pray that you would wake up believers and that you would show us, whether we turn to the left or the right, we would hear your voice behind us saying, this is the way, walk in it. And we would know what we're supposed to do with what we have. In the name of Jesus.